More than 15,000 people drive by this magnificent structure every day, yet few know what is contained inside.
When visitors come in, the most common reaction is, wow, I didn't know this existed in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Shielded by a few trees from the heavy traffic and noisy bustle of Cedar Rapids lies a hidden treasure of unprecedented value. The Iowa Masonic Library and Museums building.
When I was taken through here for the first time, I almost felt like I was in the back room of the Smithsonian.
Despite its Vermont marble exterior and classic entrance flanked by twin lions, the building remains relatively unknown. And inside its brass doors awaits a treasure trove of irreplaceable historical items and memorabilia.
To go down and pull off a book published in 1780 or 1806 out of the general library, it just amazes me every time I'm able to do that.
But with such a vast treasure comes great responsibility. To ensure the Iowa Masonic Library and Museums are kept intact for future generations, we must preserve, provide, and protect.
As soon as you mentioned that you were connected with the Iowa Masonic Library, to a Mason in another state, particularly any Mason that studied anything about the history of Masonry, their eyes immediately light up and they get very, very excited because they are very aware of the collection of the Iowa Masonic Library.
It is a collection unlike any other on earth. The Iowa Masonic Library and Museums building is home to one of the most complete collections of Masonic and general interest books anywhere, numbering more than 100,000 volumes. And it is one of only 7 major Masonic libraries in the world. The building also houses Masonic and non-Masonic museums, as well as 3 special exhibits.
My favorite piece in the collection is a book. It's called Some Years Travels. It's in the Rare Book Vault. It was written in the 1620s, and it is a journal of a man's travel around the world, in particular in Asia and diverse parts of Africa before 1650. And his view of the world is so different than our view today. And to have that insight into how the world was perceived at that time is just wonderful.
The written materials and artifacts housed here do provide an insight into the history of man. It ranges from hand-embroidered and hand-painted Masonic aprons of the 18th century to historical rifles that were used to tame the wild American West. The rare books and periodicals in the library shed light on people and subjects such as Abraham Lincoln, with volumes kept in a special case called the Lincoln section. And in the climate-controlled vault, where items of extraordinary value are kept, you'll find an original copy of the Book of Mormon, a piece published by Benjamin Franklin, and a handwritten letter signed by George Washington, words of our founding fathers that must not be lost.
But it's an absolutely unique treasure, the size of the collection, the various artifacts in the museums. It is a real treasure for Masonry around the world. It's a way of showing a little bit of what we think is so wonderful about the fraternity to non-members, so that they have a little bit of understanding of what Masonry is and does.
Freemasonry is the oldest and largest fraternal organization in the world, dedicated to helping people become better citizens. The Iowa Masonic Library and Museums reflect this dedication. The building is open to anyone, Mason or non-Mason, based on one of the principal ideas of Freemasonry, to dispense light and knowledge.
That's the whole backbone of Freemasonry. And the best way of learning and spreading light in Masonry is through education. So having a library is sort of a natural offshoot of education. Where else better to educate oneself than a library?
As a place of education, the Iowa Masonic Library had a humble beginning more than 150 years ago with an appropriation of $5 from the Grand Lodge of Iowa. And it grew with the help of a young Grand Secretary named T.S. Parvin.
It was Theodore Parvin who started the Iowa Masonic Library. He became interested in Masonry. He happened to be in a friend's house and saw a book laying there that looked interesting to him, and he opened it up and started to learn about Masonry, and he was bitten by the Masonic bug, and he started the Iowa Masonic Library with 4 books
For the first 40 years, the library had no home. It followed Parvin in his travels. After fielding competitive bids from several cities, a library building was finally erected in Cedar Rapids in 1884. But thanks to the hard work of dedicated Masons, the library and museum's collection rapidly outgrew the space available. To contain the growing collection, a new building was planned and completed on the same site in 1955. It is the same structure that still stands. The building took nearly 2 years to construct, and 2 million pounds of marble was used. After nearly 50 years, the building is still in fine condition, but time does take its toll, and upgrades are necessary to protect the priceless artifacts housed inside.
If they are allowed to become very dry, the bindings on the books crack and fall off. If it's very humid, they mildew. If it's very hot, it causes the artifacts in the museums in particular to deteriorate. We have wax figurines that will actually melt if the temperature is too high.
An awfully lot of the Masonic information here is well over 200 years old and approaching 300 years old. And if that collection is going to be preserved, it needs some special care that is not inexpensive.
The Iowa Masonic Library and Museum's Building Endowment Fund was created in 1994 to ensure that the materials housed here will be maintained for generations to come, to preserve the irreplaceable items in the building, to provide for the upkeep and upgrades that are necessary in order to protect all that we have. The Iowa Masonic Library and Museums are owned by us. Each Iowa Mason has ownership in this facility. It was built by the Masons of Iowa for the Masons of Iowa, so we may reflect upon the past. Now it needs our help to secure the future.
It's a place that we should all be proud of and be willing to support with blood, sweat, and tears if it comes to that, because there's nowhere else like this in this area that we have an ability to go and research locally and actually touch the materials that were used.
The Iowa Masonic Library and Museum's Building Endowment Fund provides a tax-exempt place for individuals and corporations to donate funds. In order to maintain the portion of the building that houses the library and museums, your contribution to the Building Endowment Fund will sustain this glorious structure for years to come. The goal is to raise $1 million so that the generated income can endow the building's proper care and maintenance and preserve and protect the treasures within.
It's part of us having corporate responsibility or communal responsibility. This belongs to us. I think we would lose the heart and soul of Iowa Masonry if we didn't have this to hold us together.
As an Iowa Mason, you can be proud of the distinction the Iowa Masonic Library and Museums bring to the Grand Lodge of Iowa and the prominence among the Grand Lodges of the world. You cannot find the books and artifacts housed here anywhere else. But with prominence comes obligation and opportunity. Obligation to protect our treasures and opportunity to be a part of our Iowa Masonic heritage. If each of Iowa's approximately 30,000 Masons gave only $33.33, the responsibility and goal would be met. You should give because it's the right thing to do. And because of the endowment fund's tax status, you can also receive tax benefits. Planned gifts can take many forms, such as cash, stocks, bonds, life insurance, bequests, or charitable gift annuities. Your gift may even qualify for a corporate match. Someone from the endowment fund would be pleased to provide you a free confidential gift annuity illustration. Call the Grand Lodge office for further information. You'll be glad you supported your responsibility. The Iowa Masonic Library and Museums truly are a treasure that Iowa Masons must preserve, provide, and protect.
When the previous video was created in 2002, there were 30,000 dues-paying members of the Grand Lodge of Iowa. Analysis showed that a $1 million endowment would be sufficient to support and maintain the building housing the Grand Lodge of Iowa Library and Museums while still supporting fund growth to match inflation. As the video pointed out, that could have been achieved for less than $35 per member. During the past 14 years, the fund has grown from about $250,000 to about $650,000, due mostly to prudent investment and a few small donations which have been greatly appreciated. Unfortunately, inflation, which is especially high in building maintenance cost, has pushed the need to $3 million, while membership has fallen to about 12,000 brothers. Our duty to preserve, provide, and protect is falling short. Many critical expenditures, such as the boiler installation following the flood of 2008 and the more recent installations of handicap-accessible steps, the very projects for which the fund was specifically intended, forced dedicated fundraising efforts to avoid largely depleting the endowment fund. Most Worshipful Brother Charles Yates charged the board members of the Iowa Masonic Library and Museum's Building Endowment Fund to identify solutions to the significant funding shortfall. These brothers met with the Grand Master, the staff of the Grand Lodge, and others to identify strategies for raising funds. Many approaches have been identified. Some will be adopted over the next several years, but the success of all these efforts will depend upon the Brethren of Iowa. We own this valuable structure, but more importantly, we own the treasure hidden within, one of the premier Masonic research libraries in the world. Please come visit your library and museums, wander through the halls, talk with the Grand Secretary, explore the various exhibits, immerse yourself in the library stacks, prevail upon the Deputy Grand Secretary to show you some of the special treasures hidden in the vaults. Freemasonry is dedicated to helping the individual Mason improve himself, not to make him better than others, but to make him better than he was yesterday or the day before. This library and these museums will assist you in that endeavor. You will leave a better man than when you arrived. And most importantly, help us preserve, provide, and protect this irreplaceable treasure.